While I hesitate to post about the Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni saga, because frankly, the discourse is exhausting, I do want to speak to the New York Times part because, especially in the last couple of days, people have been posting about metadata and, oh, they've been working on this for months, blah, blah, blah. No doubt about it, they've been working on it for months, meaning they were in discussion, active discussion regularly with Blake Lively for a while before she filed the complaint with the Civil Rights Department in California. That is indisputable, and I'm going to explain why. I've worked in several newsrooms of varying sizes. The process I'm about to describe, I can guarantee, is an industry standard. There's a process in every newsroom from idea to publish. Shit takes a while. If you're talking about a breaking news story, that stuff is minute by minute. But when you're working on a long piece, a feature, an investigation, these take weeks, months. It depends. Some stuff can take years depending on what you're working on. I just want to walk you through the process of what it's like to just get an article published on a major news website. But if anything, the process of the New York Times would be longer than whatever I'm describing because they're the New York Times, all the news that's fit to print, which if you don't know what that is, look it up. But fun fact, when I was at BuzzFeed News, our Instagram bio said all the news that's too lit to print, and New York Times made us change it. Anyway, a perfect example of how long this can take is that one of the reporters on this story was the one who broke the Harvey Weinstein story. And if you want to know more about that, you can watch the movie She Said. That's what it's called, She Said. And it is about the journalist who broke the Harvey Weinstein story. Just so you can get an idea of how long stuff takes. There's a lot of scripted portrayals of what newsrooms are like and how journalists behave. I will recommend like three. One is the movie She Said. I think it's pretty fair. Two, this is with a caveat, is the newsroom. That's broadcast TV. That's not print. And it is as chaotic as it looks, but nobody on planet Earth talks the way Aaron Sorkin writes. So you're gonna have to like reel in the speed at which they talk mentally. The other one is Inventing Anna. I actually think that was a pretty horrible presentation of like journalist behavior in terms of newsroom dynamics, like conversations that the journalists have with each other, particularly the main reporter and her boss, not realistic in any way. Again, the time it takes, the time it took for her to get a fully reported out, robust investigation ready to publish, it takes a long fucking time. There are many levels in newsrooms, and I've held a position in most of them, almost all of them. Like I said, it starts with the idea, you have a pitch. All right. There's the hierarchy. Somebody has to approve the pitch. Hey, I got a call from so and so, editor. That's the next in the hierarchy, says, okay, look into it. The reporter is going to go look into it, go back to the editor, tell them what they found. They're going to decide, have a conversation, and have a meeting about if they're going to pursue it. If it's a really high stakes story, then you're going to have more than one editor involved. And you're probably not going to have the main direct report editor as the only person. You're going to have a senior editor or a managing editor or whatever, because all have different sized burdens or different levels of responsibility and risk. It's really about risk because it's the brand, the news brand, that is taking the risk. Anytime a reporter publishes anything, it is going to be with their name on their masthead, on their letterhead, on their URL, on their domain, whatever. They take a while because the news organization wants to feel confident in what they're saying. It could take days, weeks, months, years to physically actually write the story out. But let's just say conservatively, a few weeks, which is comprised of the reporter making calls, leaving a voicemail, getting a call back, missing it, texting, setting up a time to talk, finally talking on the phone. They have to go. Oops, let me call back. Can we reschedule? Is it okay if I'm recording you? No, hold on, let me do this, da da da. And then finally they get the transcript of their interview. They have all these raw sort of logs of conversations. They have pages of research and background. And then you have to weave it into a narrative and a story that makes sense, that you want to keep reading, that makes sense from A to Z, which is hard to do. Reporters got a draft. Editor takes a first pass at the draft. I'm making this sound so overcomplicated, I think, but it is complicated. And I think that's the point, because all I'm trying to say is that no matter what Blake Lively says, it is physically impossible that the New York Times did not know about this for months, because this is just how shit works. Forget about the metadata. I don't need the metadata to know this took months. Anyway, you get your first draft. Reporter submits the first draft. Editor looks at it. Sometimes They look at it together in real time. You're on Google Docs. You can see who's looking and where they are in the thing because it's highlighted and they can leave notes and da da da. Or they check it the next day or whatever. And they're like, my draft is in. Depends on how urgent something is. It depends on how well the reporter communicates the urgency. The notes are likely in the first round going to be things like, when did this happen? What do you mean? Elaborate here. How do we know this? Not put a comma. This is missing a comma or whatever. They're larger contextual things that they feel might be missing from the story. Reporter gets the edit back, works on it, then it goes back to that editor again. You're going to do a second round of edits, same thing. Then the reporter gets it, going to try to do their final draft. That editor, if it's something serious, is going to have to loop in whether it's a managing editor, the news editor, the head of news, editorial director. A lot of these jobs are the same or similar, but they're called a lot of different things. All you need to know is that they're senior level jobs. They're responsible. Like if somebody fucks up, they're gonna eat the mistake, or a good manager should. You know what I mean? Like, this is my fault. The buck stops with me. I let this happen. Whatever. And it's something like this. Legal is gonna have to look at it. The company's legal department or their legal contract or whatever, they're gonna have to have somebody be like, yes, this is sound. This is legally sound. We won't get sued for it, because you're looking for things like, according to so-and-so said, based on the testimony of, which was recorded here, according to documents that show. Like, attribution is everything. Okay. So you're citing documents like they did, according to the complaint, blah, blah, blah. You can't just say a thing. You have to cite your source. You have to attribute it. So those are the types of things legal is looking for. They're looking for any kind of hole or loophole or trick that somebody who doesn't like what just got reported could call out. You might also have your public relations person who's representing the brand, which they all have. Everybody has one. Forget about the PR, like the other PR people who work for Blake and Justin. I'm just talking about the PR people who work for the New York Times or for NBC News, whatever. They'll take a look at it. Also, sometimes we'll suggest like language tweaks, but you can usually tell when there's like corporate blah blah bullshit that they want you to add in, and most of the time you just don't use what the promotions team tells you to use. Anyway, then let's say you're basically at your final draft. Everybody has signed off and said, okay, this is good to go. But it's not, because you need images and you need social copy. So all while everything I just described is happening, the graphics team is involved somewhere. The graphics or design team or visual art, whatever you want to call them, they are aware of the story that's in process, because they need to be sent images to make a custom header image or a custom social image, which is literally what you see at the top of this article. This is not something you find on Getty or AP or any wire service that supplies photos. It's not a stock image. It's clearly a custom made visual. So you've had to loop in the graphics team, gone back and forth with, again, edits, feedback, approval. Then you get your final images. Then you have your social team. So they've got to be aware of it. You can give them a really, really vague heads up and then be like, we'll let you know when it's ready. But then would work with the social media teams. Now, depending on the size of the organization, it could just be one social media team. It shouldn't be, but sometimes it is. Or there's an Instagram team, a Facebook team, a Twitter team. I refuse to call it X. Absolutely the fuck not. It's Twitter. You have to go back and forth with the social teams to make sure that the exact language is used. It's not for every story. It's not for every daily news story. You should have a social media team that is cognizant enough that you can trust them to publish something that won't fuck anything up. But when there's an investigative story or something where the editor in charge or the legal department decides we need to make sure this language is buttoned up, so we can give it to the social team, and then they can make suggestions of like what is clickier or whatever. And then they'll go back and forth and settle on an agreed upon text, probably like a handful of different versions, so they can schedule tweets to go out at different times of the day and different days. Then if you have a homepage editor, which sometimes that falls under social media people, you might have a person who's dedicated to building the homepage. And by building the homepage, I mean, when you go to NewYorkTimes.com, shit is in an order because somebody put it in that order. A lot of websites are just whatever the most recent thing is goes up there, and it's whatever is most recently published goes on top of the next thing. I've literally been a homepage editor because so much traffic for that organization was driven from the homepage that it was like critical that somebody spends their whole day assessing the homepage, looking at the analytics, watching in real time how much is driving from where. Then you have to get it ready to publish. And how do you get it ready to publish? You have to load it into your CMS, content management system. One that probably everybody knows is WordPress. There are more advanced WordPress sites. Some are built in-house by the brand, by their engineers and product managers, whatever. And some use third-party ones, but it's exactly what it's called, content management system. It houses all of your content. A lot of people have learned the hard way not to edit directly in their CMS because it could just stop. It could just shut down. Like if you're typing in Microsoft Word and it just closes and you're like, I lost everything I just did. So a lot of people use Google Docs and auto saves, whatever, it doesn't matter. You plug it into the CMS, there's fields for every single thing. There's headline, subtitle, social headline, social sub. If you have stuff embedded or a lot of hyperlinks or images throughout, it takes a long time to get it in the CMS. You got to look at it in draft mode, make sure it looks right. Oh, that picture is up against this one, or why isn't the caption showing up? Or no, that's out of order. That shouldn't be there. Why is this graph under the first one? And that should be blah, 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 blah. Then it's all ready. You can either schedule it to publish or you can just hit publish. In that movie, she said they're all standing there like, are we ready to publish? Are we ready to publish it? Are you sure? Are we sure we're going to do it? We're going to do it? Because once you publish it, you cannot unpublish it. I mean, you can, and you can get a 404, but screenshots exist forever. And I would know, as I am the human deceiving us. All that is to say, there is no possible physical, logical way that the New York Times worked on whatever story they published after or in tandem with Blake Lively's Civil Rights Department complaint. And in the metadata, if you go look at it, it goes back to as early as October. Of course it does. There is no way this only took a couple days. You don't wake up and write a big investigation. You just don't. Last thing about timing. The proper protocol would have been as soon as they get a pitch from the PR person or Blake herself or whoever to work on this story, they would contact the other side, the accused side, for a comment. Say, hey, we've been made aware of this thing. We're going to pursue a story. Maybe you don't do that as your first step. That's fine because you have a relationship like a lot of entertainment reporters do with talent agencies, with the talent themselves, whoever. You have a rapport and you can get scoops, and that's how people know things for other people because you develop relationships, and that's fine. But given how long this process takes, and every journalist knows how long it's going to take, there's nobody at the level of being assigned this story who would not at least think about these things. So that means they thought about it and they decided not to. It's intentional. Every single thing here is on purpose. That's what you need to know. Nothing here is an accident because it's too big of a story. And it's too big of a news organization, okay? And if there were an accident, they would have to write through and put editor's note, correction, blah, 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 or put up a whole piece that retracts the whole thing, whatever. I'm not saying there's anything worth retracting. But what I am saying is that they gave Just Inside 12 hours to respond. And then I think they published it like 2 hours shorter than they promised or whatever. No, minimum, 24 hours. Minimum. But for something like this, if it's this big of an accusation for this big of a film with this much attention on it, you would just safely assume that it's going to take their team at least a couple days to like craft some kind of statement. Because if you wait too long and you don't give the other side enough time on purpose, what you're able to do is say, we reached out to them for comment and they didn't respond. Well, yeah, no shit, they didn't respond. You just asked them for comment. So there is like an amount of time that you owe them that's appropriate. I'm not saying what I think about either person. All I'm saying is that the New York Times had this information for months, and there is no other way that they were able to get this information without the person directly involved or the people directly involved giving it to them because they needed time to work on the story, to put it together, to have images made, to have it approved by their legal department, to have heads of the newsroom sign off on it. Ethically, the person it's about ethically should not be looking at it for approval. I am hoping that that didn't happen. I don't know. I wouldn't fucking put it past them at this point. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you grab your girlfriends and you wear your florals and you watch this video over and over.